presidente de la PIARC, Álvaro Navareño, el presidente de la ATC, especialistas que vais a intervenir todos. Es un placer acompañaros, desde luego, en esta inauguración. La dimensión de género en el diseño, construcción y mantenimiento y de infraestructura vial y de transporte, y por extensión en los distintos ámbitos de la ingeniería, tiene una gran trascendencia, por lo que estoy seguro que esta sesión será del máximo interés. En el Colegio de Ingenieros de Caminos, Canales y Puertos estamos comprometidos con promover la igualdad y la diversidad de nuestra profesión y nuestra institución. Nos parece necesario aumentar la incorporación de las mujeres en las carreras STEM de ciencia y tecnología, como la ingeniería de caminos, porque solamente un 26% de las personas que cursan estos estudios son mujeres, según un informe del Ministerio de Ciencia e Innovación. Estoy seguro de que potenciando el número de mujeres en nuestros estudios, la dimensión de género irá permeando las distintas actividades que desarrollamos con la intensidad que necesitamos. La divulgación y la sensibilidad social del valor de la diversidad nos parece otra cuestión relevante.
Diversity is huge, and for us it is extremely important. And in February we had a conference, a civil engineering conference, and we incorporated a specific session on equality, talent, and remuneration of engineers. At that conference, we confirmed that gender equality contributes to the building of a fairer world. And at the association, we have a committee for the promotion of women. I want to also mention that this year we are celebrating the bicentenary of the birth of Agustín de Betancourt, a very famous Spanish civil engineer. They created a machine which was a huge advancement in the manufacturing of steel. And his sister was also an engineer, and she played a very important role in his career, in the career of her brother, from a very early age. And there is an exhibition on the work of both siblings in a room adjoining this auditorium. And I'm convinced that all the presentations in this seminar are going to be extremely interesting, and are going to make very seminal contributions to the topic at hand. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miguel Angel, for your kind words. We will now give the floor to Nasir Ali, who will address us in English.
Please, Nasir, floor is yours. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Miguel, for the introduction. It's my great pleasure. It really is an honor, in fact, for me to be here today amongst old friends and hopefully some new friends as well as we go along during the course of this morning. It's a simple task that I have to be part of the welcoming group here today to say thank you very much to all the organizers. Now, if I've left anybody out, please let me apologize from the outset. But thank you very much to the host there of the college itself, and then, of course, the ministry and my dear friends at the ATC. So thank you very much for organizing this. Last but not least, I need to also thank the group, the PGDIT group. I hope I got that one right, Emanuela, for organizing this as well. Now, as we've just heard, the importance of having women. Women constitute about 50% of the population of the world. And as males, we've been neglecting the talent that we have in terms of helping us to build a better road network. And of course, more importantly, the road may be built the same for men and for women, but the use of the road is very different. Women tend to use the road different to males, especially in the way we drive. You know, men just want to get in that car from point A to B within 2 minutes. I want to be there. Well, women are a little bit more relaxed. They're more considerate as far as safety is concerned. I don't know what the figures are here in Spain, but I can tell you that the country I come from, we have many more men involved in crashes than women. So women are safer drivers. But in terms of getting more women into our profession, I think that we need, especially as males, must stop promoting this profession as if it's only for males. It's not the case. And we need to start, I believe, at high schools. When we go to career events at schools and etc. and that, yeah, we mustn't just sort of concentrate on promoting this particular profession to the male students. We need to do that to the females as well. And amongst us within PIARC and of course in ATC as well, when I see people like Marie Carmen, etc. around here, you have excellent role models. So I think we need to give them a bit of an additional work to do, yeah, in terms of promoting our profession. With that, thank you very, very much. And I wish all of us a happy and successful deliberations this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nasir. Y ahora le vamos a dar la palabra al presidente.
Now we will give the floor to the president of ATC, Mr. Abredeño. Thank you. I should start by thanking all of you joining us today. It's got to be said that this meeting has been possible because of several circumstances. First of all, I want to thank PIARC for having appointed a specific team on gender diversity and equality, and which has been working very hard on these issues. And so thank you very much to PIARC, Nasir and Patrick for being here with us, and also all the people that have come to Madrid, all the people from the Equality Unit that have come to Madrid. And we from our association are going to try and do our best to promote the participation of women. I also want to thank the Madrid Red Association. And for the colleagues coming from abroad, I want to say that ATC was created to support the Spanish PR committee. It started its activities in 1971, so many years ago. And ATC is a forum of neutral and independent cooperation between professional organizations and companies interested in developing the technical and the social aspects of roads. The association comprises 13 different committees. Some of them are presided over by women, and we have a significant participation of women. But unfortunately, although it is increasing, there's still more men than women. But this is a reflection of what happens in society. So we need to be realistic. We need to work, but there's still, a lot of room for improvement. But in Spain now, there's, a lot. Baby boom generation is retiring, and we need to take advantage of this knowledge transfer, opportunities to train more and more women and incorporate a gender equality perspective into the process. In this regard, the gender approach can be addressed from different viewpoints. And another thing I wanted to mention is that doing some research and trying to find out more about this, I realized that a lot of the information available just, shows that there's a lot of research missing. We don't have enough research missing. There's not enough statistics to reflect the real situation in society. What we need is a realistic snapshot of the situation of equality. And I'm sure that once we have this realistic picture, we will see that there's still many shortcomings. There was a report published in 2022 on road safety and gender perspective and other studies on transport. There's a lot of people that are going to talk about this today, but I think that a lot of work is required in this area so that we can improve and increase the participation of women. In terms of this seminar, I hope it is going to be fruitful. There's over 290 people connected online, and here present in the room, there's over 90 people. And this is, I'm sure, going to be a very special event. And I'm sure that, we are going to have this meeting in the future again, and I hope that we will have more women than that we have now in our sector. Now we will give the floor to the Secretary General for Road Transport, Martha Serrano, who will probably give us a highly inspiring address. Martha has been very active in the realm of gender inclusion. Martha, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Welcome everyone here. Welcome to Madrid. I hope you will enjoy the stay here in Spain. We are having a really nice weather, but it's not usual. And I will change now to Spanish because I was asked for. Y esto me da pie para hablar de la importancia.
I would like to talk about the importance of language. When I'm asked to speak Spanish, because it is an official language of PIARC, and it is important for Spanish to be used, and it is important to make it visible. This is very similar to what happens to women. It is important to speak the official language. It is important to speak Spanish because it is an official language. And when you use language, you should include the whole of society in the words you use, because language contains many biases. So, because, at first sight, language may be something innocuous. And I thought, well, I will speak English, but they said, no, you should speak Spanish because it is an official language. And when you use language, you should also use it in such a way, include all the members of society. In our world of engineering, we still have many biases. There's still a minority of women working in the sector. To give you some information, in the Spanish government, the central government, there's 60% of women working in the central government. However, in the Ministry of Transport, which is one of the largest ministries with more projects and more things can be done for society, because we still have many competencies at the level of the central government, women account for only 36% of the payroll. So, the Ministry of Transport, I mean, the number of women in the Ministry of Transport is much smaller than the number of women at the level of the central government as a whole. So at the ministry, we have a program to promote the participation of women, but we have not been very successful in implementing it. And then in engineering, we account for 20%. I'm talking about road engineering, but it's very similar in other branches of engineering. And if we speak about transport, there's less than 10% of women. So there's fewer and fewer women as you get closer to these professions, which historically have been regarded as male-dominated. The truth is that to work in the road, to work in infrastructures, to work in railways and in transport, are still regarded as male professions. And this is something that we need to change, because in a context where it's becoming more and more complicated from a business point of view and from the point of view of professions, losing 50% of the population, and in many cases and in many areas of this sector, this transport sector, because we're losing we're losing a lot of information and we're missing a lot of experience, which would be extremely valuable in building a different culture. When Minister Puente appointed me to be Secretary General, this was one of my mandates because, infrastructures were traditionally a male-dominated sector. So my task, is precisely to change that perception. That's why, that's one of the reasons why I was appointed. And it's not a question of building roads or building railways, but it's also a question of providing a public service. And so it's important to think about the service we're going to be providing, and not just about the roads themselves or the railways themselves. So what service I want to provide, because the Ministry of Transport is committed with making it possible for people to move in the most convenient way possible. And it is true that men are still the majority users of cars. There is basically an economic bias because men are the richer sex, and men are the ones that have the cars, or the majority of cars, because cars are the most expensive means of transport. And then on the other hand, we have public transport, but public transport also uses the roads. So, sometimes we speak about equivalent vehicles, but we should not just think about the vehicles, but also about the services provided by those vehicles. So we need to apply the gender perspective and think about roads with, for example, bus lanes. The only bus lane in Spain was built in 1992. It was a success in 1992. It's the bus lane of the road to La Coruña, but that was the only one, and no other bus lanes have been built, dedicated bus lanes, I mean. And then as far as services are concerned, those of you who know me know this, I come from the area of public transport, and I'm deeply convinced about the need of having a large and an effective public transport system. And the majority of users of public transport are women. And if roads are not conceived for making it possible for buses to move faster, it is women that are being penalized by this, because we are the most frequent users of public transport. So if we think about infrastructures without taking into account the services they allow, well, we are forgetting about the needs of half of the world's population. Because when I say that we need to think about infrastructures with a gender perspective, I'm not just talking about women. Women in general, and this is what studies tell us, are still in charge of taking care of our dependent relatives. And so we normally travel with our children or parents. And so, it's if we consider not just the women, but also the people who depend on women, it's far above 50% of the population. So we shouldn't just conceive roads as infrastructures for cars, for private cars. No, we should consider the importance of public transport. And so events like this one are extremely important to make it possible for everybody to understand the problem that exists. And because in Europe we have a wonderful road network, but it is perhaps, it is high time we change the way this infrastructure is organized, the way roads are exploited, the way roads are used. And of course, this is not easy to change because people are very protective. They don't like being told that what they have been doing for such a long time was wrong. But these biases need to be eradicated. We need to overcome those biases. And these biases are not just male chauvinistic, they're also racist or ageist, etc. But those biases exist and they need to be abolished. And these events are very important. And sometimes I'm surprised, but because when the word gender equality or the gender equality is mentioned, or these words, which only apparently refer to half of the population, but in a forum like this one, organized by PIARC or ATC, here, normally there would be 80% of women 80% of men in the audience. But when you include words like these, the proportion is reversed, and there's many more women that come to listen, and men don't feel that equality has anything to do with them. That's why they don't come. It's basically women who come because men believe that this is not really, doesn't really affect them. But this has to be changed because what we need is to promote a culture that addresses the needs of the whole of citizenship. That's why I'm very thankful to PR. I'm thankful to ATC for this invitation and for allowing me to give my viewpoint. And I would like to thank you for your work in this area, for making the effort to include this gender perspective in your association and examine these issues. It is true that now it is up to us to talk to our male colleagues who have not come to this meeting and ask them why they didn't come and convince them, that it is extremely important for men too to become involved. But things, however, have improved, because I remember a conference in Mexico a few years ago on this same topic, and it's not that there was only 20% of men in the audience. There was zero men in the audience. But things, are starting to change. There's an increasing awareness of the importance of including women, and the awareness that it is up to us all to work towards this noble goal of gender equality. For roads to respond to the actual needs of the whole of citizenship, both men and women. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm not going to be able to stay because I have a horrible day today, but I would have loved to stay for the whole meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Martha, for these words, and I'm happy that your words will reach many countries through Zoom. Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you very much for having stuck to the time allowed to you. And there is a little gift for you on the tables, so you can pick it up because it's for you. Thank you.
Vamos a pasar ahora a la primera presentación, bueno, en realidad la única presentación de la jornada.
Now we're going to go to the presentation of the day, which is going to be delivered by Emanuela Stocking.
es la presidenta del grupo de
Sí.
inclusión de
She's the
género y
president
diversidad
of the
y
Gender
nos va a explicar
Inclusion
el trabajo
Group,
que se está haciendo en PIARC.
and she's going to talk about the type of work that we're doing at PIARC, the Promotion of Gender Inclusion and Diversity Team, PGDIDG. Good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be here and to talk about the type of work we do in our team in order to promote gender equality. In the next roundtable, you're going to have the possibility of listening to the members of this team. So I'm really thankful to them for the type of work that they do. We've got some slides and I'm going to show them in English, and I'm going to speak in English as the slides are in English also. Maybe they can help me because I don't know how to show the slides.
No. Okay. Gracias. Thank you so much. So just a few words about PIARC, about the association for those who are not familiar with PIARC. PIARC is the oldest international road association founded in 1909. And the first global forum for the exchange of knowledge and best practices on road transport, including high income and low and middle income countries. Right now we have 127 member governments, also regions, university companies and individuals. And most important, we have the experience and knowledge of 1,200 experts coming from more than 80 countries and working in 20 technical committees and task forces. Here you see just a snapshot of the committees. So they work on technical issues. They build network among them, and they produce, of course, reports and deliverables, as well as seminars, workshop, and as Marta Serrano was saying, the reports and all the proceedings are in the official languages of PIARC, so English, French, and Spanish. And then also another focal point for PIARC is the organization of congresses and seminars to disseminate these deliverables and to have further discussion and debate. Here you see just an overview of the reports about the previous cycles, the working cycles, which last 4 years. So every 4 years we have a new working cycle with a new strategic plan and technical committees. And again, the Route Roads magazine, also the references of the website. Coming now to the focus of this seminar and the gender inclusion and diversity. As it was said, also I liked a lot the enthusiasm and the speech of Marta Serrano. 50% of the road users are women, and the road sector is not currently gender neutral. So we would like to make this path and to have it gender neutral. And the women have different partners, travel partners from men. And as it was said, the transport sector is male dominated right now. And also we need as an association to ensure that roads work for all the users, as Marta Serrano was also saying. We have to ensure all that. Here we have a small video that we have prepared with
people's everyday life.
With a team.
Diversity
I hope that the audio is functioning.
And in PIARC is important to ensure that the roads we
If not,
design
Miguel,
and build
we can
work
see it
for
at the
all
end.
road users. Even though women make up 50% of road users, they're underrepresented in the road transport sector workforce. Gender inequality in road essential to people's everyday lives. Diversity in the road transport sector and in PIARC is important to ensure that the roads we design and build work for all road users. Even though women road users, they're underrepresented in the road transport sector workforce. Gender inequality in the road sector contributes to a lack of gender diversity and inclusion in PR. Workforces produce stronger business outcomes and better understand and anticipate customer needs. Women who work in male-dominated fields often experience gender bias and discrimination. So what do we mean by gender bias? Gender bias is favoritism toward or prejudice against a particular gender. We see gender bias when a working environment elevates men's voices and ideas over women's. This can result in both conscious and unconscious bias in the decisions we make, the work that we do, and the ways we interact. When this happens, PR misses out on women's contributions. This can fuel a culture of exclusion and invisibility. It can also lead to women's needs not being addressed. We all have biases, and it's important to understand where they come from. Linked to gender norms. Gender norms describe how we are expected to behave because of gender. They're restrictive for both women and men. They shape attitudes and perceptions of workplaces, including transport administrations. Dominated sector, and we see them reflected in the underrepresentation of women in PR. It's also reflected in controlling issues with agencies. Now, PR is shifting gears and reshaping its culture, practices, and gender inclusion and diversity. Change is hard, but through training and education, people encourages all to gender equality in our organization. Using PIARC leads change to create more inclusive
Yes, so it was a very effective video and focusing on the importance of fighting the gender bias in our transportation sector. So just a quick snapshot of our team, Promotion of Gender Inclusion and Diversity team. It was created in June of 2021 by the Executive Committee, so the governance body of PIARC, to support our association to raise awareness on the issue, to create and develop an inclusive culture, and to ensure that all the products and the technical reports from the committee reflect the diversity of the road users. An important achievement was reached in November of 2022 when the PIARC Council adopted the gender inclusion and diversity as a core value of the association. And here we have put also the references to the website if you want to read more about that. Okay. Just some elements of the strategy. We saw that the current gender composition of our bodies in PIARC is not equal, so it's not 50-50. And one of the objectives of this team is to have more women by the next working cycle, 28, 30, 31. We had also an important achievement in the World Congress we held in Prague in October to give the award for the first time for gender inclusion and diversity to a technical committee that I will come back on that. And our current work includes the data collection because, of course, we can propose recommendations and policies, but data are essential. So we are collecting data on gender within PIARC. We also are trying to create a gender network and also ambassadors, champions, allies identified in the PIARC bodies to support our activity. And we are now also developing a code of conduct to report possible discrimination or harassment. And we will have an annual report to the council, to the PIARC Council in November. I try to okay. An important activity right now, as I said, PIARC works according to working cycles of 4 years. So now we have the working cycle 24-27. We have developed as a team a sort of training activities for the gender inclusion and diversity for all the PIARC members. And we have also we have communicated this initiative, encouraging all the members to complete this training within the first 6 months by joining a technical committee. In this working cycle, we have new people, new members attending the committee, so we want them to follow this training with videos, reading, and reflection on gender diversity and inclusion. I try to move, but it's very slow. What we want to implement in this cycle to raise awareness, to create an inclusive culture. We have also materials developed by a special project, so with new communication material, images and languages. We have the Blue Guide, which is sort of a summary of all the guidelines about the functioning of PIARC. So we want the Blue Guide to reflect the value of gender inclusion and diversity. And then an important thing is in this new working cycle, we ask each of the technical committee to nominate a contact point, a corresponding member for all the gender inclusion developments. And finally, one focal point is also to look outside PIARC, so to work with the international organization on the same issue on gender inclusion and diversity, to have a sort of comparison of benchmarking analysis and to see what also they are doing to liaise and to partner with them. And I was talking about the award. So for the first time in the Congress in Prague, we awarded, we gave this award for the gender inclusion and diversity to the Technical Committee 1.1 Performance of Broad Administration, chaired by Christoph Xenofontos. And here you see other two representatives, Alex Walker and Anna-Bild Pettersson. And it was really a great achievement for our team to be recognized and also to give this award. And we're working now to have another award for the Winter Maintenance Congress of 2026, which will take place in France, in Chambéry. So that's a snapshot, that's an overview of our activities, and of course, if you want to know more, I'm happy to answer your questions, and you will see, as I said, in the following roundtables, the members of the team talking about their experience. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Emanuela.
Thank you very much, Emanuela. As we've said, this is a new PIARC activities. Maybe there's questions, comments from the room or from somebody who is connected online. For Manuela, maybe we can give you some minutes if you want to ask questions for Manuela. Make any comments. Alberto, could we give him a microphone, please? Emanuela, you want to come to the stage to answer him? I have a question. Considering the huge diversity of cultures that we have amongst the different members, countries of PIARC, there's absolutely different situations, right? There's some countries with a level of evolution in terms of equality, which are huge, but there's others that maybe for the time being they still have legislations which are clearly opposed to equal opportunities. And in that sense, does our team or committee intend to issue some recommendations depending on the state of the evolution of equal opportunities in different countries? Well, there's actually, yes, different situations in different countries. I personally come from a country in the south of Europe, Italy, where the gender equality in transport is certainly not the focus of attention. So yes, there are differences. We have good examples of UK and the US also, and Northern Europe countries. And we're trying to analyze everything. And yes, we do have recommendations. As I've been saying, there's some training and communication material for the members that are also recommendations of the national committees of PIARC in the different countries in order to promote women so that women are present and active in all of the committees. I hope I've been able to answer your questions. In Spanish. Any other question?
Hola, buenos días a todas y a todos. Gracias por la
Good morning. Thank you for organizing this day. My name is José Monfort from the Foundation. We've been told that the access to the profession starts in high school or secondary education, even maybe sooner than that. I am the father of a 15-year-old daughter. So can you please, number one, help me with the teenage stage? And number two, do you foresee any activities for high school centers and secondary education centers in order to promote these actions? Thank you for your question. Actually, in our team, we presently are working on communication for member states of obviously. But yes, it is a possibility. We can maybe organize sessions such as today's in schools, high schools, universities, so as to disseminate it and share the interest amongst young women, young girls, to talk to them about the transport sector and why not about maybe joining engineering training programs and all of the different jobs that might be related to transport. That's a great idea. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comment? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Emanuela, then.
Welcome back to this session, the first Mesa Redonda, dedicated to the national and sectoral strategies, challenges, and objectives related to gender inclusion. I'm pleased to have today a distinguished panel of experts coming from Spain, US, and UK, reflecting also the representativity of the PIARC countries. So we will dive into a while into the national experience and best practices on gender inclusion. I prefer to give them the floor to each panelist. I will introduce them one on one, and we keep the question at the end of their statements and key messages. So we start with Patricia. Patricia is, and I switch to the Spanish.
She is a road engineer, a civil engineer, and she works at the Directorate General for Roads at the Ministry of Transport of Spain. And I am delighted to say that Patricia is a member of our team. She has been a member of our team for just a very short time, but we're very happy to have her. And Patricia, you have the floor to convey your key messages. Thank you. Well, I am going to speak Spanish because I want to promote the Spanish language. And as Manuela was saying, I am a member of the diversity promotion team of PIARC, and I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about this topic. I worked in the private sector for many years in the UK, and the companies I worked for, I participated in the different inclusion and diversity committees. I was also lucky because I participated in several editions of the International Female Engineer Day, which is quite important because public institutions and private companies organize different activities to promote STEM in high schools and other venues. And this is very important because it is important to attract women to STEM professions. As Martha was saying in her presentation, data indicate that women tend to, when we travel on the road, we tend to be more sustainable. We tend to use public transport more, we walk more, and we use the bicycle more often. So any activity to incorporate the gender perspective has a huge potential to improve sustainability, and and this will result in a greater decarbonization. I would like to thank the PIARC for giving me this opportunity to share my views with representatives from other countries as to how these challenges are being addressed and what different international bodies are doing in this respect. Thank you very much, Patricia. This is a new perspective, gender equality combined with an effort to increase sustainability.
With Lori Porreca. Lori is an international program manager with the Federal Highway Administration. She manages bilateral relationship for the Office of International Programs, and she represents the agency on several World Road Association committees. So she's a key member of the PGIDT. So Lori, you have the floor.
Gracias. Buenos días. Good morning. Gracias por invitarme. And
thank you very much for inviting me.
I don't embarrass myself. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration, which is our road agency within the U.S. Department of Transportation. And I don't have a direct role actually in gender diversity within the agency per se, but there's many things that are going on that kind of we all participate in. It's been going on for a long time. Federal Highways has been collecting some form of data about gender since around the 1980s and really much more actively since about 2000. And even in that time, it's been a very slow progression. So in the 1980s, we had about 27% women in the organization, and now we're about 39%, which is still, there's still a gap there. But I would say one of the things that Federal Highways has gotten much better at is being much more sophisticated about the data that we collect and then what we do with that data. So we don't just collect gender data, or we collect data on race and national origin. We also look at hiring, separation, retention, and then we analyze that to understand the motivations behind different actions. So we have something called a barrier analysis team, which looks at the data and then tries to find correlations with different like what's causing retention, what's causing people to leave the agency. And we're getting better and better at identifying those causes. And even in cases when we can identify those causes, those barriers, we are able to adjust the way that we recruit and the way that we hire to fill gaps in our agency. So for example, we have a decline actually in women in some key leadership positions and also in key technical positions like engineering technicians. We don't understand what the barrier is, what's causing that, but because we're aware that that particular gap exists, we're able to modify our recruitment plans to focus hiring in a way to make up for that gap, if that makes sense. And then I would say the other thing that maybe the US has gotten better at as well is the institutional support for gender equality and diversity generally. So particularly at the presidential level in the last couple of years, we've had two declarations to further prioritize gender inequality. And this has allowed all of the agencies within the federal government to identify additional resources to make it a higher priority in the agency as well. So again, that feeds back into our ability to collect data, understand at a micro level why people are hiring, leaving, advancing in the agency or not. So although we still have a workforce gap in many ways, we are getting better and better and understanding kind of what's causing those things and then making changes to address it. And then I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Lori. Just as you see, for each panelist, we have the key message just to summarize the statement and the speech. It's important what you highlighted. It is a cultural change with long-term commitment to ensure the change. And also what you say about the US institutional support for gender inclusion and diversity. This comes to the question that Alberto was asking in the previous session. Now, what about the difference among the countries? So I think it's an important statement. And now we move to Carmen de Andrés, de Colegio de Ingenieros de Caminos, Canales y Puertos, prima mujer ingeniero de Caminos, Canales y Puertos, prima mujer que ingresó por oposición en el Cuerpo de Ingenieros de Caminos y Premio Nacional de Ingeniería
And she
Civil.
has received a national award for civil engineering and the gold medal of the Colegio. Carmen, you are a role model for women in the transport sector. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to participate in this round table. I would like to say that I graduated many years ago, 50 years ago, and in these 50 years, I've had the opportunity to work both for private companies and for the public sector, in large companies and smaller companies, and gender equality is becoming greater and greater priority. And seminars like this one make it possible to raise awareness on the different points of view that women can contribute, not just in the road, but also in railways, in art and culture. So what I would like to mention and place a focus on the phrase I chose, which is increasing the presence of women in management positions and in the boards of directors of companies in the construction and engineering sectors. So this is a goal, but not just from the point of view of what companies are doing in order to include women in these positions, but also from the point of view of what women have to do in order to reach those positions. Because people keep talking about diversity, but of course women have to be prepared to fill those positions. So now, for example, I have a company where 60% of workers are women, but of course it is important for women to be prepared like any other professional. Just by the fact of being a woman, I mean, just the fact that you're a woman doesn't necessarily enable you to fill a certain position. So there's also women who are not really interested in filling a managerial position. So if women want, they're interested and they want to fill those positions, they've got to prepare themselves. Nothing is free of charge. So, and I wouldn't like for women shouldn't reach those positions because of a quota. They should reach those positions because of their value, because of their competences. And the Association of Road Engineers has a panel for the promotion of women, and this work group is encouraging women engineers to get qualified, to, gain experience in order to occupy such positions. And for me, roads are very, close to my heart. Although now I'm, doing something different, but I started off with roads. And so I think that more investment should go to roads. So if the seminar had been on a different topic, I would probably not have come. But since, it has to do with roads, I am delighted to be here. Thank you very much, Carmen. And you mentioned something very important, increasing the number of women in managerial positions and the question of skills. Women have to have the right skills to fill those positions. And we mentioned this is something that is very important for us because, of course, women should not be valued just because they're women, but because they're competent professionals in this sector. And this is something that should be underscored.
I'm pleased to give the floor to Justin Ward, representing UK. Justin is a head of policy and technical practice at CIHT, Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation. I take also the opportunity, she's not here, Sue Percy, the CEO of CIHT, who is the vice chair of our team. And Justin has a focus of ensuring the EDI core to the technical and policy work of CIHT, and he's very involved in PIARC, also vice chair of the PIARC Communication Commission, and really a strong element of our team. So Justin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So I work for the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation, and our CEO, Sue Percy, has been key at really aiming to drive this forward across the whole sector. And it's been a number of years, 2015. That's a long time. And I think progress is, we know what needs to happen. I think it's just that we need to accelerate it and work across all elements of the sector to make sure that things are progressing. Just very recently, we did a survey of our industry, and 82% of the workforce are males, which seems there's a long way still to go. I think there's aspects that have been mentioned earlier, particularly about levels of roles within the sector and making sure that they're more representative across the whole of the industry. And I think that's a challenge. We'll I'm sure, touch on that later. So I think in terms of the key message, we know what needs to happen. It just needs to happen at a greater pace. And I think that will be key for addressing future challenges that lie ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. So yes, the importance of accelerating the change at a greater pace. And now we move back to Spain to Sara Gomez Martin, Gender Inclusion Unit with the UMP Rectorate. Sara is Director of the Women and Engineering Program at the Spanish Royal Academy of Engineering, and her work has received several awards, including the 8th of March Award by the government of the Madrid region for her efforts to help women achieve equal opportunity than men in science and research. So, Sara, you have the floor.
Thank you, muchas gracias. Voy a hablar en español, aunque mi currículum lo has leído en inglés.
I will speak English. I will speak Spanish, sorry. The first thing I have to say is thank you. Thank you to the Madrid Colegio Road Engineers, because I come from the industry, I come from the industrial world. So I'm here, well, because I'm leading a project which is called Women and Engineering, aimed at increasing the number of women in the different branches of engineering. This is not a local problem of Spain, or it is a global problem. There's big headlines in the international press saying that the world is running out of engineers, both male and female engineers. And of course, we have talked about accelerating change. And that is true. We don't have time. We can't waste a single second. We don't have time because technology moves very fast. We need to move faster than technology. Since 2016, I have headed this program, Women and Engineering, and I used to be a vice chancellor of the Madrid Poly. university, and we were very worried because we were running out of students. Students were less and less interested in engineering. So if we can't get the new generations to embrace engineering, we will be lost, and particularly women, because in the Spanish university system nowadays, there's more women than men. 52% of university students in Spain are women, but in engineering, they only account for 1/4 of the student population. And in Europe, the figures are similar. The UK is even worse off, and Germany too. But when in those days, as vice chancellor, I started thinking about what was happening, why our young people were not interested were not choosing engineering. We started working with high schools, grammar schools, and we realized that we were already late because students, well, they were already too old in high school, because problems are structural problems and cultural change is necessary. And of course, it's a global problem. So I think that if we, and I always give the same example, if we lose half of the population, which is women, or we account for more than half, but still, if, we can't address the challenges of the third millennium without the participation of women. And also diversity is very important. And so I have been fighting this crusade since 2012 at the Academy, and I'm delighted to be here to contribute all that the project has taught me in the last few years, because we have been able to find out some of the causes of the problem, some of the root causes of the problem. And I'm also delighted to share this panel with my distinguished colleagues. And thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, the importance of new generations, and it's important to talk to young people and make it attractive for them to work in technical areas. I don't know whether there's any questions from anybody on Zoom, but if not, I do have my own questions. Or are there any questions from the floor here? No? Well, okay. So I have my own questions. Sarah, you talked about your project, Women and Engineering. Can you tell us about the lessons learned in this project, the causes and the consequences of the lack of gender diversity? Yes, as I was saying before, since 2016, we have learned several things. The first one is that when we try and explain to our young people what engineers do, because one of the things that, well, is that they don't know what we do, and I have empirical proof of what I'm saying. When I go to schools and I ask students what engineers do, they don't know the first thing about it. They have very, strange stereotypes in their minds. They believe engineers are male, white, and not very clean. That's the idea they have. And that is the first thing that is very striking or even shocking. And we realize that we can't really speak to these people when they are 16 or 17. It's too late. You need to talk to those people when they are 12 or 13. But that is also a little bit old. So now we have designed some actions to talk to children in primary school, which is when boys and girls decide or whether they prefer more scientific or more humanistic careers. So girls from the age of 6, sometimes, more often than not, come to the conclusion that scientific subjects are too difficult and they're not prepared for them. And this is replicated later on. Girls who are 13 or 14 feel they're less prepared to, have a scientific career. And also at university, women in general don't have that perception that they can excel in engineering. So women have to increase their self-esteem because sometimes this is lacking. And number two, teachers, at least in Spain, I think that in Europe, in other European countries, things are different, but in Spain, teachers in primary school, it's basically women. 90% of them are women, and they don't have any STEM training. They don't have STEM training. So we are in the academy, we are designing a teacher training program because you can't get girls interested in science or mathematics if they have antibodies against them because they're not really, those subjects are not really promoted from an early age by those female teachers. And also, it's not just the educational system, it's also the cultural system around the students, namely their families. Some parents tell their girls that engineering is too male-centered and so they had better do something else. That's what my father told me 40 years ago, and that was understandable. But now, in 2024, it's a little bit, ridiculous. Perhaps Eastern European countries are different, but in the west of Europe, that is the situation. And then seminars like this one, and I think it was Carmen that mentioned it, I think that a seminar like this one is indispensable to raise everybody's awareness, especially the government's awareness, because this is such a big problem that even if we launch different projects, we are just, a drop in the ocean. So it's got to be governments that have to really do something about it. And the figures are really depressing. I was reading recently a document from the European Union saying that the GDP of the European Union would increase by 3.5 billion euros if there was gender equality. These are blood-curdling figures. This is a huge amount of money that we are missing out on because we are not promoting equality. And one of the things that is happening is that, and you can do this yourself, you can ask this question yourselves. Ask a 10-year-old girl if she imagines herself designing a road. And I'm about to finish. And this is related with engineering. The first year that we implemented the Women in Engineering project, it's a mentoring program where last year students are mentored by high-level professionals, company executives, in this migration to professional life. And in this first year, there were 3 or 4 civil engineers. And I asked them, ask your male colleagues how they thought the women that were with them in the same classroom be like in their first year at university. And they said that males told them that those women would be clever, odd, and ugly. And this is, what, the boys said. And as you can see, many of the civil engineers in this room do not meet any of those specifications. Well, sorry, two of the three, because everybody is very smart here. Very smart. Not smart, but extremely smart, yes. So this is happening, and this was just 6 years ago. And I want to apologize for, but so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Carmen? To what Sarah said, I would like to add that the problem of engineering is a general problem that affects men and women. And of course, it's very important to speak to school children from an early age. When you go to a school and you tell a boy or a girl, you say, you turn on the tap and the water comes out, but do you know where that water comes from? They don't have a clue. So in this world, which is so intercommunicated and interconnected, we need to insist that a lot of roads should be built in the world. And this is another problem we have in Spain, because, people really are not, people are not really very fond of traveling, or less, so this international dimension is very important. And then there's also the economic problem, the salaries, because people in the humanities have higher salaries than engineering professions, regardless of whether it's men or women. So we need to insist that a lot of roads are needed, a lot of railways are needed. There are many people who don't have access to drinking water in the world. So, and we need people to build those roads and to build those railways, whether it's men or women. And I also wanted to mention something, which is management, business management. Because engineering period lasts, well, 10 to 20 years, but then there's a management part. And so for the management, engineers are also, should also be counted on. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I just wanted to build off of what Carmen and Sarah said. So it is very important to engage girls early in order to help them, kind of guide them in their education. And there is a lot that's going on in the US to, like, from the change from when I was a child to my stepdaughters, who are both, in STEM areas now, which at the time when I was growing up, there weren't as many opportunities. However, I also want to encourage us as transportation organizations to think broadly about how we approach the design and building of road networks. Because for the US, it's not about necessarily building our road network anymore. It's about addressing these complicated problems that require diversity in disciplines and are highly technical as well. So I'm all for more women in STEM fields, but I also think as a sector, we need to think about transportation more broadly and increase diversity in multiple ways. And it only really benefits how we address the current problems of climate change and equity and other things that are really, like, more pressing than simply laying down roads.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurie. I come back to Patricia. Patricia, hemos decidido en esta discusión, ¿no?, que la movilidad, el transporte es una...
Mobility, transport, what are the strategies and the goals that you have in your institution to promote equality in the road sector? Well, as I was saying before, sustainable mobility and the promotion of gender equality are very closely related. In this respect, at the level of the government in Spain, we have a project included in this sustainable mobility law, which is now being discussed by Parliament. This draft law is aimed at ensuring mobility for all citizens as a right, so avoiding discrimination of any type of group, both, women or disabled people, etc. I also want to mention that this law is based on 4 main pillars, which is sustainability, digitization, territorial cohesion, and social cohesion, which are fundamental to promote the inclusion of the gender perspective in society. Now, with respect to the concrete measures being made by the General Secretariat Road Transport, I would like to mention 2 of those measures included in Axis 2 of the Equality Strategy of the Transport Ministry, which are very specific. One of them is based on the incorporation of parameters for the promotion of gender equality in the specs of projects for the planning of linear infrastructures, and they will be mandatory for projects going through metropolitan areas. This measure is being developed by the Secretariat General to identify specialized consultancy firms that can identify the parameters that may be incorporated in projects that may be used as pilot projects. So in this way, we are not only achieving the inclusion target, because we are promoting the incorporation of the gender perspective in the hiring of women, in the granting of subsidies, etc. Another measure included in the strategy is related with the incorporation of the gender perspective in the planning, design, and management of service areas, rest areas, and integrated maintenance contracts. The idea is to guarantee that the general population may benefit from the services they need in different rest areas or service areas. And this measure is directly connected with the inclusion of different parameters in the hiring of the public sector. Another measure related with mobility, according to the data of the European Equality Institute and other data, women use bicycles quite frequently to go from point A and to point B. And so a guideline for the modification of the cycle network, well, there's been proposals to modify the cycle networks in our cities to make them more women-friendly. Yeah, it's important to identify parameters, and we were mentioning this in the previous session. We're analyzing different parameters also in our teams. Justin.
So we say that we have to leverage the interest into the transportation sector, but why attracting women to the sector is not enough? What we have to do more, according to you?
It's very important. I think that it's one critical thing, but I don't think it's everything. I think we need to think very broadly. So certainly as a membership body, we want to attract a diverse and inclusive membership base. And I think there's much more awareness of that. We've touched on that. So I'd like to just give an illustration of a story that we share collectively as a society, and it should tell us something about this issue. So in 1949, the first crash test dummy was invented. So that's about 70 years ago. And that was for aviation. That was for not so much for road transport then. So in 1968, it was developed. They developed a crash test dummy for cars. So 50 years ago. And in 1983 in the UK, we made seatbelts mandate. You had to wear seatbelts. I can't say mandatory. Oh, I can. There we go. So that is what, 40 years ago. So 70 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And last year, there's news articles that we're finally developing a crash test dummy for an average female body foot. So 70 years since the first crash test dummy, 50 years since we've used them in the automotive sector, 40 years since seatbelts have mandated, to last year when we suddenly say we need to design for a female body, which in that time there must have been a lot of road crashes globally. And that's quite shocking. Why, as road administrations trying to improve the safety of the network, that the safety systems weren't being designed around the female body? What about civil society? What about government? Why wasn't it mandated that it should be, the design should be for a 50% of the world's population? I think it's quite a shocking figure, and it does say something about the road transport sector but I think it says something more broadly. And I think that's why it's not just about the workforce.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for your contribution. We have a question from the Zoom, from the US, Ron Bueno for Sarah. I read it in English. Since the global community is losing engineers, both male and female, where are the people going if not into engineering? Te la voy a traducir. Dice, ¿cómo la comunidad
So, the global community is losing engineers. Yeah, I understood the question. Thank you. So, where are they going if they don't stay, or where are they going? Well, in Spain, men and women, basically go to management and business management and administration. That's a very attractive profession nowadays. Economics, business management, advertising, public relations, etc. And that's a lot of men and women go there. In Spain, women also prefer biology. Yeah, I gave you a global figure of the number of women in engineering in Spain, about 25%. But if we break down that average, in bioengineering or biomedical engineering, there's more women than men. And this happens at a world level, not only in Spain. In chemical engineering, there's also more women. In organizational engineering, too. And what is partly more women is in computer engineering or IT engineering. In IT engineering, there's two interesting facts. In the 80s of last century, IT engineering in Spain was a lower degree, and there were 40% of women in this degree. But then the name changed to IT engineering, and now the figure plummeted to 11 to 12%. And then another thing I wanted to share is that in the mathematics degree, 20 years ago approximately, there were also more women than men, because the majority of women that took those courses were devoted to teaching, to the teaching profession. But now algorithms are in fashion and they're paid a lot of money, and so there's more men than women. So the parameters that women use to choose their career have to do with the purpose that they have. We like doing things that may help others. And this is something inherent in women. We want to help other people, and we don't really care about the salary. And it's interesting because engineers in general are poorly paid. Now the salaries are increasing because there's just a few of them. But in the case of women, I remember that when I was vice chancellor of the Poly University, I asked the human resources manager why there were such big salary differences between men and women in the same position. And he said, well, women are worse at negotiating salaries. We don't fall over ourselves to make more money. So women-dominated professions in the world are normally poorly paid. It's basically education and health. But health is complementary to engineering. 70% of students in medicine in Spain are women. So to answer your question, women are in working areas, and there's an interesting study of the parameters that women used to choose a profession. And there's two elements. First of all, women need to have a purpose, a clear purpose, and there should be a social component to the job. We attach a lot of importance to contributing to progress and to society and to people. And so those are the professions women are in. But women are different. Men have a different way of seeing things.
Thank you. Yes, I want to say something related to the fact that we're not good at bargaining. Yes, you're right. And it's going to be worse in the future. I have hope in the young women. I have the hope that they'll be doing it better. The youth at large are facing a problem, that is, which is loneliness. They're used to working in front of a computer, communicating via mobile phone, listening to podcasts, but they're not used to taking decisions as a group. And I believe that's the future, and that we need to learn how to negotiate or bargain, how to generate teams. And maybe women in that field is more capable of doing that because we're used to bargaining things. We've always been doing this. So yes, that takes me back to what I said at the beginning. We need to study, we need to get prepared and bargaining, not wanting to be the only winner in this negotiation, but rather the balance theory. We need to learn to do that. And therefore, the future is going to be full of that. I really don't honestly see the youth ready to face that. And that is why women maybe can replace them.
Just briefly, 2 points. We mentioned technology in other areas. I do think that's an issue for the sector more generally, being attracted to other areas, other aspects of particularly computer science now with artificial intelligence we hear a lot about. And I think part of the challenge for the sector is to attract those people into our industry. So that is one aspect. But I think also the other point is, and it's been mentioned a number of times, is people leaving the sector. So we talk about the glass ceiling, but we don't talk about the glass cliff edge and why particularly women leave the sector at particular points in time. I think we need to better understand that. Is it due to experience, the experience of being in the industry, that it's not positive? I think obviously Laura, you mentioned that the US is trying to understand that better. So I think that's an aspect. We've heard about the glass ceiling a lot, but not so much about the cliff edge.
I don't think Federal Highways has a handle on why people are leaving, why women are leaving in particular. I think that's something they're trying to understand better. And one of the ways like they're doing that is now doing exit interviews to specifically ask, why are you leaving? I know our agency has kind of an old school model about how you advance. So you start and then you move, or geographically, you move around the country in order to advance, which doesn't really suit a lot of professionals or professional couples with family obligations now. So that may be one of the things. So I think we have to rethink not just how to encourage women into the sector, but how are our organizations structured to really limit the way that people need to manage their careers and their personal lives now.
Sí, con respecto a lo que decías de que las mujeres tendemos más...
Related to what you said about the fact that we women tend to be more in profession space or focused on care, data speak for themselves. And in that sense, it is important that in primary and secondary education, we underline the fact that in other professions, we're also exerting a very important social function. When I was 18, I decided to be a civil engineer. I thought about the social function. I wanted to promote, to advance. I wanted to see the change in the type of work that I carried out through my career. I wanted to help society at large. So we need to work on that. We need to incentivize the fact that engineers, not only civil engineers, but all other types of engineers have a very important social component too. That was my contribution. Thank you.
I just check if we have questions from the room, from the audience. José Manuel.
Gracias. Soy José Manuel Blanco y voy a cruzar.
Thank you. My name is José Manuel Blanco. I'm a PIARC member, but I'm also the Dean of the College of Engineers, the Association of Engineers. You're not talking about a big percentage of women who are attracted to engineering. And there's also a small percentage of youth who want to be actually engineers, not only women. You've talked about professional associations, the fact that they, and schools also don't know much about us. But if we go higher up in this society, the majority of the image that we project is provided by the mass media. And if you ask out there, how is it possible that we have drinkable water? Who does the bridges, the airports, the oil pipelines, and so on? They do not relate as engineers to that. Streets, structures, soccer foot, fields and so on. So the transport sector and all of the engineers should actually try to struggle to get to the mass media. Does anybody remember of any mass media where the main protagonists are doctors? A lot, lawyers, a lot, truck drivers also. But do you remember any of those with an engineer? Only Brian's life. They were laughing about what is it that Romans do for us. I don't remember, apart from that, any other maybe character who is an engineer. We need to work that. We need to fight on the mass media, and we need to project a nice image. And we engineers and road engineers especially are only news when we have something bad as a piece of news. If somebody does something bad, then we appear there. But there's no status to engineers. Maybe now we want to install an inaugurating statue to Agustín de Betancourt, but nobody knows us engineers. Maybe it's our fault. How can we achieve that? Well, that's my question. How can we get there? I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm just going to give you the question.
I think it's a very good question, and it's good to have a reference to a great British movie as well in there. So if anyone's not seen The Life of Brian, I'd highly recommend it. I think that the example of the crash test dummies was popularized particularly in a book called Invisible Women. And I think what you're suggesting is maybe we have an invisible sector. So it makes it doubly difficult. I think if you have a challenge of invisible women in an invisible sector, I think we might even have the challenge of negative perceptions of the sector. And I think it's about the social value. I think it's about the sector being one of the solutions for global challenges, particularly decarbonization and particularly embracing technology and innovation. And I think it's trying to tell that story to everyone at a very young age, so they are attracted to the sector, and also that it has great opportunities. But I do think it's a combination now of probably invisible women in an invisible sector. So I don't unfortunately have much in the way of answers on that, apart from working at various levels, I think, and companies sharing honest conversations about what works and what doesn't work in terms of recruitment and retention. It's about STEM ambassadors in schools. I think it's about getting organizations to actually demonstrate change, not just say they're going to change. So it requires a real collective effort, I think, to change things.
Thank you. So, do you want to speak, Patricia? No.
Yes, I will just, I don't know, no sé si la persona que ha hablado antes y ha participado de MAFRE.
Yes, the person who was talking on behalf of MAFRE, has that person left? Yes, he has. Okay. I'd just like to say that the ministry presently this week and last week, actually, we had students from secondary schools that have been in different departments of the General Directorate and Operation, and they've seen this is some of the measures that we are taking in order to promote our profession, not only civil engineering, but also public service at large. That's all I wanted to contribute. Thank you.
So we have questions from the Zoom. I have 3 questions. We try to Raquel Fernandez Perez for all the speakers related to road design and constructions. We have also in Spanish. ¿Cuáles son las medidas más eficaces que pueden
Which are the most effective measures that can be implemented in the road sector in order to take into consideration the gender issues and improve inclusion of women? Could you, any of you, indicate which are the best practices presently and the best resources available? It's a question for all of the speakers, all of the panelists. There's no answers. I'm just reading the question that was written by a Zoom participant. And we have a question from US Regunum.
Refer to the STEM. This question applies to all the speakers. Would it be advantageous for transportation organization to work more closely with the STEM community to encourage women and men into engineering? La voy a traducir. Porque hemos hablado de
Okay,
STEM.
she's translating the question. We've been talking about STEM, and this is a question for all panelists. Is it an advantage for the transport organizations to work with the STEM community in order to encourage? I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with my many languages. To encourage women and the work of engineers? Can they work together with the STEM community? To the first question, and it's none of my business, to be honest, but apart from the habits of women, the potential of women in planning tasks, in managing transport is very, very important, because I don't know if they enroll more or not, but in IT and electronics, we women have technical abilities, actually technical skills better than men in many cases. So the future, which is AI and so on, I think the feminine vision is very important, but not only because of the different behavior habits, such as safety, timing concepts, and so on. They're different, and I don't know much about that, but also because of the ability to analyze the design processes and in order to consider climate change issues. So women, they are going to be a very important job to do because of the new tools in order to do the design and the maintenance and so on.
We just mentioned AI, and I think there is a challenge in that as well in addressing biases. I know in the Department for Transport, I think they tried to use an AI to generate an image of a chief scientific advisor in the transport department. And they kept clicking the button, and you kept seeing an image of a man, kept clicking the button, image of a man. I think it took about, I don't know how, probably Jenny knows this, but I think it took about 14 tries or something before it came up with an image of a woman. So I think there is a risk that the background that we're working from is that we're not driving the car forward with looking through the windscreen, but we're actually looking in the mirror backwards. And I think that's a challenge with AI. But I know that wasn't the question, but I just heard the term AI and it reminded me of that. And I think there is a challenge in bias in systems that aren't even that are kind of basing their data on the past. And I don't think we can do that. So we have to make sure that AI isn't a biased system.
Yo no contesto porque no sé nada de carreteras.
I'm not going to give an answer because I don't know much about roads, actually. So, but anyway, I think that in your institutions you have numbers of the number of women, and I'd like to add something. I don't think we're good at communicating. Not only people don't know what we do, but also what they know is not good. I mean, they only know about the bad things that we might do from time to time. That's terrible. When I give talks in schools, in the official association, professional association of engineering, we ask them, tell me something ever since you woke up this morning, anything that you did that is not related to engineering. And it's difficult for them to find anything. All they do is related to engineering. The former president of our academy was a civil engineer, and he said that the number of lives that you civil engineers save is probably larger than the amount of lives that doctors save, such as drinkable water and many other things. The social value of engineering is very good for men and for women, especially for women. So from the time when they're children, they need to know. And one of the questions I suggested we should ask them is, how are communications focused on our youth? Who orients the youth in order to choose one profession or another one? I don't think anybody is doing, and if they are doing it, they're doing a bad job. So you, as a dean of the professional school, you asked for solutions, right? Well, my suggestion is that you should start organizing a scalable task so that our youth, our children know what you civil engineers are doing with a social aspect. And you have a big advantage as aeronautic engineers also, that you do spectacular things. When we take children of the schools to civil places, they're really astonished. So we have a communication issue. And nobody has mentioned that we have not talked about soft skills, because we do have hard skills. We engineers know about fluid mechanics and so on, but we're not talking about soft skills. Another anecdote that I'd like to share with you, I remember that when we were changing to Bologna, European type of degrees, we got together with the HR people that I asked them, why is it that we women make less money? And I asked them, do engineers that are leaving the University of Polytechnic University of Madrid, are they good? And they said, oh, they were really good, but if they spoke, they would be even better. They don't speak. That's a problem. We need to do something about that. Communication, teamwork, leadership, those softer skills that we don't work in our educational systems, not from school. I think they're more and more important. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we've run out of time for this session. And I'd like to thank all of the panelists for their messages, for their comments and reflection about the gender equality topic. We need to meet again. We need to continue working. We need to communicate amongst ourselves. I invite Patrick Bayachak, Secretary General of PIARC, to moderate the second round table. Thank you so much.
Vamos a empezar la segunda mesa redonda.
We're going to start the second round table.
Vamos a comenzar la segunda mesa redonda.
We're going to start our second panel.
Por favor, vamos a empezar la segunda
Please, let's come and take a seat, because we're going to open the second round table,
Vamos a empezar la segunda mesa redonda y la va a moderar Patrick Mayer.
which is going to be moderated or chaired by Patrick Mayer-Jack, who is the Secretary General of PIARC. Patrick, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Patrick Mayer-Jack, Secretary General of PIARC. Before starting with our panel discussion, I would like to thank a couple of organizations and people, of course, the Ministry and the ATC, who've organized this event here in Madrid and who have, as always, been very hospitable. I would also like to thank in particular Miguel Casoflores, our technical director, who's organized this event, and Emmanuel Stocky, who chairs our team and who's working on these topics. As was highlighted, we need roads to go to hospitals, to go to schools, and French Road Association found it very interesting to highlight that actually roads are the first social network. I think it sounds really good. We were talking about promotion earlier, so this might be something we might want to use again. And at PIARC, we work on making sure that roads are well designed, well maintained, well operated. And for the next 4 years, we will be focusing on decarbonization, on resilience, on road safety. And for that, as Laurie said earlier, we need STEM skills, but we also need social skills, because we need to prioritize, we need to negotiate, we will need to understand the needs of the transportation system users. And for that, we need everyone. We need men, we need women, And in this panel now, we will talk about how we can implement gender mainstreaming with good practices and case studies, hopefully from the panel and from the audience in the room and in Zoom as well. So we have speakers from Sweden, Austria, the UK, and Spain, of course. And I would like first to ask every one of our panelists to share with us some insights, and then there will be a time for questions and discussions, just like in the first panel. So we'll start with Lina. Lina Granlund from Sweden works with the Swedish Transport Administration since 2017 as a project leader in early stages of transport and infrastructure planning. So Lina, what would you want to share with the audience?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us here. It's very nice to be here today. So I work for the Swedish Transport Administration, and they are responsible for planning, construction, and maintenance of roads and railways in Sweden. We have around 10,000 employees in the Swedish Transport Administration, and around 42% of the employees are women, and 46% of the managers are women. So it's a fairly balanced organization. But my key message today is that since Sweden has been working with gender mainstreaming in government offices since 1994, the importance is to keep this going and to see this as not a one-off activity and something that can be done as a project or as something that a panel could do, but to have a constant process of engaging in this kind of work in a very systematic ways. And I think one important thing is also that it needs to be anchored in the highest management levels and the highest decision-making levels, but also on all management levels. Since we are 10,000 employees in the Swedish Transport Administration, we need to have these issues anchored at all the levels and all the managerial levels. And also, I think one important thing is to have a function and or maybe several functions that are responsible for working with these issues and making sure that we actually do implement the policies and the strategies that we are working with. So that would be my main message for today.
Thank you very much, Lina. You're doing much better than PIARC. At PIARC, 17% only of our committee chairs are women and 22% of our secretaries. So we'll try and be more Swedish. Our next panelist is Helena González Romero from Repsol in Spain. Helena graduated in business administration with an executive master in human resources management, and you are a certificated coach as well. So Helena, please share some thoughts if you want with the room.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días. Encantada de estar aquí.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here to share with you the experience we have in Repsol presently. And for actually some years now, we're living a transition in our sector, in our company. And we in people and organizations function that I work at in our company, we're thinking about different programs to accompany the social change that we want to generate, and this change in our sector and in our business. We're convinced that we need to work on that. In the previous panel, they talked about that, but I'm sure that in this panel, we're going to talk about that again. We do not have a big pool of talent of women associated to professions of engineering. And I would like to say not even in the professions or the professions within our sector, because we're not seeing, when we are recruiting, for instance, that we have a lot of professionals being offered with necessary qualification, women, in order to work, for instance, as, I don't know, lab specialists in refining, in plants, in asphalt, and so on. And we, Repsol, as a company, are thinking of designing different plans from the very beginning, generating vocation, but also facilitating the entry into our sector. It is a pleasure for us to be here with you, to share with you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Our next panelist is
Gracias,
Reinhard
Elena.
Vogel, from ASFINAG in Austria, who's also a member of the team, actually, just like Lina. I forgot to mention that earlier. And Reinhard studied civil engineering and works for ASFINAG, where she's been with ASFINAG since 2006, and where she's responsible for innovation, digitalization, and sustainability in the construction of motorways.
Thank you. ASFINAG is the motorway operator in Austria. We have like 3,000 employees, and we've been making several efforts on women empowerment for the last years. And there were many activities and programs, especially for women, excluding men. And this is where the whole thing became very emotional. And because of this obvious exclusion, we lost men, and we lost many women too, because no woman wants to have some extra treatment or anything like that. We just want to be equal. And so we made a step ahead with our strategy, and we went from this what can we do for women, and now we think like, what do women, or what does diversity add on values to the company? And it's not only the internal collaboration is getting better, our results for the customers are getting better, and I think only with the inclusive thought we can stay attractive employer, because in Austria we have got a great lack of skilled workers either. And so the program itself, it's very diverse too. We have like big events where men and women are welcome. And there the supervisory board and the CEO and the CFO are invited to give their statement to gender inclusion. And this is very important for the visibility and for the commitment. So it's okay because the management has the statement that it's important for us. And then we have several daughter companies like tolling, operating, and civil engineering, and they all have their like different or the special needs. And so under the big umbrella of the strategy, we make our own programs for our daughter companies, and here it's all about to get the broad base. So we have like mentoring programs for everyone, small connective events, so that we really can talk to each individual employee. And I think this is the combination, the frame from the management and the hard work that takes time to tell everybody the same message again and again and again.
Thank you very much. Already good advice already. So our next panelist is Laura Casella Avila, who works with the Fundación Laboral de la Construcción. So Laura graduated in audiovisual communication and journalism and has reinvented herself 4 times already. Currently works with the Fundación as Director of Communication, Digital Transformation and Strategic Alliances. Laura, please.
Buenos días a todos y todas. Gracias por la invitación. Pues sí, la verdad
Thank you very much for this invitation. Many of the things I wanted to share have already been mentioned. You've spoken about soft skills, and if I'm here today, it is precisely because of soft skills. You said that I had reinvented myself. When I was less than 30, I was already sitting on a management committee. And Carmen, in the previous panel, was saying that women have to get prepared to reach those positions. And I always think that women, you know, are like an iceberg, because the tip of the iceberg is what you see, but what lies below water is all that women have to do in order to reach certain positions. So what I did in order to become a member of the management committee was, to get prepared. And, I also had to make tough decisions. And of course, not everybody needs to be sitting on a board, but if you do want to sit on a board, you need to be able to do so. And later on, I can tell you exactly what I had to do in order to reach that position. I have been in the construction sector for 3 years. It's a male-dominated sector, as you all know. And normally in a seminar like this, in the first few rows, you normally see women. And but previously I worked for a telco company, which is also a male-dominated sector. And in Telefonica, I was in charge of a very important education project, project that was very ambitious. I was younger than 30. I was not an engineer, and I had to convince many men and many male managers that to lead technological projects, the most important thing is, of course, to have the knowledge, but also to be able to manage talent, because when you manage technological projects, you need to manage talent. And that is something that women can do very well. I was asked to give you an idea of what the construction sector is, what the situation of the construction sector is like in Spain. Last year, we had over 150,000 women affiliated to the sector, and this accounts for 11% of total, which is still a low figure, but it is extremely low. It is even lower in construction sites, where women account for only 0.6% of the population. But the good news is that women are starting to be trained in construction skills, which is, good news. For example, for vocational training in civil works, 1 in every 3 students is now a woman. So we are seeing a development in the training of women in this sector, but there's still many barriers that prevent women from accessing the construction sector. Some of those barriers have been mentioned in the previous panel. The sector doesn't have a very good image because it's male-dominated. But the construction sector is an innovative sector where lots of technologies are being incorporated and new materials are being incorporated, but this is something that is not normally publicized. Well, the only thing that is publicized is a number of casualties and the number of accidents that take place in the construction sector. There's very few women role models because there's still very few women that have managed to make way for themselves in this sector. There's also very little information, particularly when it comes to choosing what you want to do in high schools. When girls have to choose what they want to do, well, there's not much information from the construction sector. We have a project that we have applied in different schools to publicize the construction sector to young people. It's a project based on gaming, which is very interesting. I can tell you about it later. And then there's a cultural issue because biases are still there, and we need to really talk to children while they're still very young, before they start assimilating those biases. Now, at the foundation, we're doing a lot of things in order to attract talent, female talent, particularly to this sector. We launched a project this year called This Is My Story. We have made a series of interviews to female role models, women who are. If you look it up on YouTube, you will see a series of very short interviews that we have organized. In addition to this project, we have other projects only for women. For example, last year we organized a public-private project in Spain just to train women in the area of industrialized construction, particularly in rural areas of Spain. So thank you very much for inviting us to this forum.
Thank you very much, Laura. Our fifth and last panelist today is Jenny Cook, who is currently working with PIARC, actually. She's seconded from the UK as the technical advisor for strategic partnerships and gender inclusion and diversity. She's really instrumental for us on all these topics. Jenny's worked in transport policy for the UK Department for Transport for 5 years across road safety and international transport policy. And in particular, she's cooperated with multilateral organizations and you're also involved in mentoring programs. So Jenny, please.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks, everyone. It's really nice to be here and to share the stage with lots of great women, both in this panel and the previous panel. So just, to maybe take a step back, because I think it's been touched upon previously, but to tie it all together, I think transport is very important for women, but for all people. And I think, reframing the conversation around what transport is, as soon as you step out of your door, you're a user of a transport system. Obviously, probably a road is the immediate thing you have outside of your house, but then you go on to other transport systems. So even if you're a woman who has nothing to do with transport, you're a transport user. And then obviously we then come to the issue of the fact that, women aren't very well represented in the transport sector. And this is obviously important because, if we don't have women in the room, having these conversations when transport policies are being discussed or road infrastructure is being designed, they're not able to kind of raise their challenges or their particular individual needs and concerns. And that means we're more likely to have transport systems, whether that's the road infrastructure itself or a public transportation system like a bus system that isn't really going to work for the needs of women. And then you're creating a barrier to women kind of, almost literally leaving their front door, because transport, obviously through that, we access employment, we access education, we access social and cultural, opportunities that life gives us. So, I think that's, the big picture of why we're all here and why we're all discussing this. So yes, as Patrick mentioned, I currently work within the PIARC General Secretariat to support the great work of the promotion of gender inclusion and diversity team led by Emanuela and also Sue and many of the members who we've heard from. But just to kind of maybe recap a bit of what Emanuela was talking about earlier. So within PIARC, we have 127 member countries from all over the world. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of within the gender inclusion space, the way I see it is there's sort of two strands happening. So the first strand is making PIARC a more inclusive organization. And by that, we mean having more women as member of PIARC, having more women as, chairs of technical committees or as part of the executive committee, which sort of makes a lot of decisions for PIARC. But the other part of the work is around the actual kind of work products themselves. So the technical reports and the kind of case studies and etc. that PIARC are producing, if those are sort of not aware of gender conversations, gender issues, women's travel patterns, women's needs, then the reports that you're going to be producing obviously aren't as good or maybe are kind of, missing, have lots of gaps in what their content is covering, as opposed to, if you are kind of aware of this issue, producing reports where, even if the gender disaggregated data, for example, isn't there, if you even just mention that within the report, you're highlighting that actually this is a problem. And then, once you highlight that there's a problem, people suddenly start to think, well, what are the solutions to these problems? So yes, I think, we can talk a bit more about it when we get into the panel discussion, but, a few things that PIARC is doing now to kind of try and solve the problem or work towards solving the problem on the two fronts of both inclusivity within PIARC, but also the products that PIARC is producing is, gender training. So that's obviously really, really important, because quite often, within this space, we often find that we're sort of preaching to the converted. Most people within the room probably already think that gender inclusion is really important and we have to achieve it. But what about the people who aren't in the room? They're actually, the people that, if anything, we want to be in the room more than you, although obviously it's very lovely to have all of you here. I think training is really important. It's really key because, with the training, you can provide evidence-based projects or programs, or have those conversations about, obviously we want, women to be included because it's the right thing to do. It's a nice atmosphere for everyone. But also evidence shows that, if you have more inclusive teams and you're having those conversations with more diverse people, bringing up those problems in the conversations, which then are going to lead you to try and create the solutions before you create the problem, if that makes sense. So with the training, you can kind of try and convince those people who maybe aren't fully behind the agenda to kind of get more engaged with it and raise that awareness. And then also the other thing that we're doing, which has been mentioned by Emanuela, is within each technical committee within PIARC, we have a sort of a contact person who is responsible for raising awareness of this issue. So, rather than it all coming from PGIDT and the top of the organization, we want to make sure that there's a sort of real grassroots movement, and that at that kind of level, people can't ignore the issue. They are being actively engaged, they are being convinced, and then hopefully through that, change is a slow process. We all know that it's incremental, but each individual also does have a role to play. And unless you get a sort of, critical mass of people supporting the issue, it is not going to work if you just have a small minority. So we kind of really have to make sure that we're engaging everyone in this issue. And I think evidence, training, and having these conversations is kind of really critical to that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Indeed, we at PIARC, as you highlighted, we want to have more representation of women in the bodies of the association, so that at least they can serve as reminders that the diversity of users of the transportation system need to be taken into account. And if I may recall a conversation we had when we thought about, women's needs and tunnels. And it was very illuminating for me, actually, because you identified that men and women don't have the same behavior towards risk, which leads to a variety of needs that need to be taken into account when designing tunnels emergency systems. So that was a really great example. So thank you very much to our 5 panelists. I would like to check with the room whether you have questions to our 5 panelists. There's one from the Zoom regarding mentoring. And I would like to start with Rangad, but I think many of you will want to contribute. Mentoring, and the question is, what type of mentoring exists? Would you be talking about formal or informal mentoring programs? And do you have feedback about how effective those programs are? Thank you.
We had a very formal program for only women and only a few ones every year. And now we decided to make it broader. So it's for everybody in our daughter company. And there are like, I don't know, 10 or 15 mentors, and everybody can choose, and it's very informal. And I think this is what is needed. Sometimes women are not sure if they can take the next step, and they just need anybody to tell them, just go ahead, do it. Yeah, it takes like one call, and that's it. So we have good experience with the informal mentoring.
Contribute, please. Thank you.
Y nosotros también tenemos varios programas de
We also
mentoring.
have several mentoring programs to address different needs in the ecosystem of female talent. We started, first of all, a mentoring for university talent with the Royal Academy for Engineering. There, what we want is for professionals from Repsol, female technicians from Repsol. We would like them to mentor the university students in different areas. So there's training also in soft skills. Soft skills are very important. And we have tried to identify the key things that people need, that women need, in order to join the job market. And apart from that, mentors also act as inspirers, because they're there to inspire women, because there is, at the beginning, particularly when women choose their future careers, they may have problems, but they also may have problems at the end of their careers, because not everybody who starts finishes their careers. And that's what mentors are very good at, because they can make sure that women who start their careers finish their careers. And it's also important to promote female talent across all the different layers of an organization. We want to take very much care of the female talent that is going to have leadership positions in the company, but also we'll want to convey the message of diversity and inclusion at the level of the grassroots. That's why we implemented a female leadership program only for women, because we believe that there are some aspects that need to be taken care of. We need to take care of this question of the feeling of there is a crystal ceiling, but of course the crystal ceiling or the glass ceiling exists. We monitor female talent throughout the year through our diversity committee, and what we have seen is that there are many women who are very well prepared, but when they have to make the decision, they either do not feel they meet 100% of the requirements to take on those leadership positions, or there may be biases when those decisions are made. So that program is focused on female talent to provide training in terms of coaching, and also reflects on so that women can reflect on what can I contribute to the company, or what do I have to ask, and what do I deserve. And we have also included a specific mentoring program with women who can accompany other women and make them aware that they can also make it.
Thank you very much indeed. Some years ago, I was told by a previous director I was working with that when there's a new position, men will never hesitate and will say, I can do it, no problem, I want the job. Whereas women will always ask, well, are you really sure I can do it? I'm not quite sure. So you seem to say something quite similar. Lina, I would like to ask you, in Sweden, in your organization, do you have a mentoring program as well? And more broadly speaking, what are the tools in your toolbox? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. No, I don't know. I don't think we have a mentoring program within the Swedish Transport Administration. But what I wanted to highlight another project that I think is important, also in relation to what you have said about the construction sector. Because the Swedish Transport Administration is one of the biggest procurers in Sweden when it comes to construction services or projects for infrastructure. And so in 2018, the government made a goal for the industry, the construction industry, to have at least 25% of the new hires in the construction sector being women, not the construction sector as a whole, but the new hires at least. And currently, I think it's around 10% or something. And so the Swedish Transport Administration, being a government agency, of course, needed to step this work up and see what we could do about this. And so being one of the big procurers, the Swedish Transport Administration then decided to make a bonus for companies hiring women. So if you hire a woman in the construction project for a 12-month period, or as an intern for a 6-month period, you get a bonus. And then that means that you can make money on hiring women. And so that is, of course, a good incentive for the companies. And so when I checked the numbers before coming here for the year 2022, there were I think 145 projects we had, there were 25% women. of the new hires for 12 months, and there were over 50% of the internships that were for 6 months that were given to women. And then I also want to state that it's important also to make sure that we have a list of job categories where these women are also hired, because we don't want to hire women that clean the offices, for example, or those kind of things, but to be actually working as construction workers, and there is a list of categories that needs to be fulfilled for them to get this bonus. So I think that can be one way of trying to start off the industry. Of course, if there are not many women graduating or coming into the industry, of course that will continue to be a problem. But then also the companies need to work harder to find those women that actually exist. So I think that's something that we from the government sector can do to try to incentivize more women in that part of the sector.
Thank you. Is this tool something that is implemented in any other organization that you're aware of?
En nuestro caso, como tal, no hay
In our
una.
case, we don't have any guidelines, but what we have tried to do is, in addition to being able to access that talent pool, that scarce talent, and I was mentioning in the previous session, through advertising campaigns, well, we have tried to give examples of women, for example, working in Repsol, in professions related with technology. In our case, in addition to energy, we also have digital, a strong digital component, trying to convey the message, look, this is happening within the company. Now, within recruitment, what we try to do is several things. We want to have an inclusive recruitment process. Initially, this doesn't seem to be necessary, but even sometimes when you publicize a vacancy, the language you use excludes women, because in Spanish, we have genders in the language, and you say, experto, and so women don't feel, that this is related to them. And also, the managers who make the decision, we also try and address some unconscious biases they have, or at least make them aware of those potential biases. And we also want to make sure that there is parity when offering candidacies. We always make sure that there is a certain percentage of women that meet the criteria. And what have we achieved with this effort made in the last few years? Well, for example, last year, 52% of new hires were women at all levels of the organization and in all the different professions. So, business administration, where of course women are normally quite profuse, but also in other areas such as, technical professions. We have seen that if you make the effort from the beginning with campaigns to attract women, because the company is fully aware that if we don't include women, we will be losing out. And it is very important to include them at all stages. And of course, once the person is in the company, you need to give them tools so that they stay with us. And that is how we managed to hire over 50% of women last year. So we don't have mentoring process, but we have this mentality, this mindset in the company.
Thank you so much. I think you said something that every manager can hear, that if we don't include women, we lose out, like basic bottom line type of approach. You also touched upon representation in the construction sector. And Laura, do you want to maybe elaborate on this? So that engineers, there's more than engineers in the road sector. We need social skills as well. That's very important. But representation, more broadly speaking, is also very important for women in the road sector. Are there initiatives that you think are very effective
Sí, bueno, nosotros, la Fundación Laboral de la Construcción,
Our foundation, in our foundation, over 60% of our headcount is women, but we work in offices. We are white collar workers. Now, when we go to the sites, because the profile of workers in the construction of women in the construction sector as well is quite interesting. Their mean age is 44. So this means that women do not choose to work in the construction sector since they are young. It's not a vocational sector. They prefer other types of professions like caring for other people, etc. So it's like women who reinvent themselves. Many of the students on our courses are women who are of a certain age, after having had children or after being in other sectors, they look for a work opportunity in the construction sector. So they come to the sector at an age that is normally above 40. And over 60% of women in the sector have higher education. Over 90% of women have permanent contracts, and over 75% work full-time. So this also shows that the sector provides stable employment for women. Now, what are we doing in the foundation? Well, my colleagues were talking about different programs. We do not give economic incentives or bonuses to companies for hiring women, but we do pay particular attention to recruitment, the use of inclusive language, a lot of internal training, so that people in decision-making positions, so that they have all of this incorporated in their DNA. We launch a lot of campaigns. As PR manager, I am in charge of placing women at the center so that they become role models. Another important thing is to attack the problem at a very early age, at primary schools, so that, construction is one of the professions recommended to female students, because we have realized that when girls reach 16 or 17 years old, they're still geared towards professions such as nursing, looking after elderly people. But at high schools, girls are never given the choice, for example, of doing something in the construction sector. So what we have done is created a project trying to make women aware that without the construction sector, there would be nothing. There would be no hospitals, airports, bridges, tunnels. There would be nothing. There would be no infrastructures. So we have designed a program taking this into account, and we go to schools and we ask students if they want to live in a world where there's no bridges or schools or roads, or if they want to build a world where all of these things exist and where women play a very important role in constructing all of these infrastructures. And I can tell you that this is a kind of game that we organize in schools, and children have to resolve different mysteries and different and it's all very interesting. And after the game, we organize a brainstorming session a quiz to see how much they have learned, and then we give them a prize if they get all the answers right. And it's quite interesting to see how children people from 16 to 22, because we have tested it with people at those ages, do not look at their mobile phone a single time. They compete, they collaborate within their groups, they compete with the group next door, and there is a stopwatch, but they want to keep working to resolve all the different tests, and they leave the room with solid ideas about the construction sector. And we have made a survey And over 90% of the people who have participated in this game have learned something about the construction sector. They would recommend working in the construction sector, and they would even consider working for the construction sector. And so there's still a lot to do. I think that any initiative we may decide to launch to sensitize people is more than welcome.
Thank you very much. I think I was very impressed yesterday. We had a meeting at the ministry here, and we saw the new logo for the National Road Network. It's a yellow star. I think most people in the room are familiar with it here. And it's very impressive that there is a logo for the national roads. It's quite rare, actually. In fact, if you compare two very different industries, in the fashion world, when there is a new handbag, it's like someone went to the moon. It's like the end of the world. Stop everything. When we build a new road, yes, sure, new road. Let's focus on the next road. So we probably don't self-promote enough as compared to other sectors. I have a question for Jenny, if that's okay, Jenny. So how do we convince people in a male-dominated sector, still is male-dominated, of the need and interest of involving women? Everyone in the room is convinced, I suppose, or if not convinced at the beginning of the meeting, convinced at the end of the meeting. But so how do we do that?
Yes, so I think interestingly, actually, we talked about mentoring, but there's also something called reverse mentoring, where maybe if men in leadership positions were nicely convinced, shall we say, to maybe have a maybe female mentor. So the way that reverse mentoring works is usually, obviously, a mentor is someone in the more senior position, but reverse mentoring sort of turns that on its head. And so the more senior person will have a mentor. It could be for a diversity reason, including gender, or it could be, from a different kind of socioeconomic perspective as well. So maybe actually one suggestion would be, could, we have a form of reverse mentoring where those senior males are paired with female colleagues. So they, firsthand can build that relationship because, fundamentally, obviously, I think evidence is really important. And we've talked around, the economic benefits to women being involved in the room, but humans are also, quite social creatures. And so if a man builds a relationship with a woman in that professional sense of understanding what, their kind of career journey has been, what the challenges they might have faced, potential prejudices and biases, whether those are conscious or unconscious, and I think that can kind of maybe on that personal level, on that human level, really highlight why it's important for women to be involved, what women can kind of bring to the table, and sort of, if there are active steps that, that individual in a leadership position could do to benefit the position of other women, then, it's probably a real challenge that it's kind of more difficult to say, well, this has nothing to do with me, if you're sat facing across from someone who's kind of telling you their story and it's, potentially quite personal. So that's potentially one suggestion. The other thing, which may be on a slightly different tangent, but I think is maybe a potential challenge that I would like to bring to the room and for people to think about is, yes, we've spoken before about, women shouldn't be in the room on one hand, just because they're women, they should be qualified and we expect them to bring a certain level of knowledge and expertise. But actually, on the other hand, I would say quite often, because there are these additional barriers for women, whether those are kind of conscious or non-conscious, when I think about things like recruitment or role-based, job specifications, for example, yes, women are less likely to put themselves forward for a role unless they feel like they meet all of the criteria. Men are probably likely to say, oh, I'll just give it a go and see what happens. So firstly, we obviously need to be very conscious that when we're kind of writing, what kind of we expect from someone applying for a job, are we creating barriers already for women? But the other thing is, if you're kind of in a position where you're recruiting, I would like to encourage maybe people to be more open-minded. So, you know, rather than thinking about experience in terms of years or, you know, tick boxing certain experience that maybe people, and whether those are men or women, actually might not have access to just because they maybe weren't in the right place at the right time. I think it's really important to look more at like kind of the skills that the individual brings, as well as most importantly, actually, what is the potential for that individual? Because, you know, we're all on kind of journeys, you know, whether you're kind of, you know, 20 years into your career or fresh out of university, you know, it's kind of like, can that person take feedback? Is that person open to learning, you know, different things? What potential can they bring to the team? So rather than immediately thinking, oh, I want this person who has, you know, 5 more years in this particular job and they've done X, Y, Z experience, you know, what about considering the person who, you know, may be a woman, but also may not be a woman, and say, actually, like this person maybe doesn't have that experience, but, you know, what skills do they have? What potential can they bring to the team? You know, do they bring something a bit different that I don't already have in the team? So I would like to kind of challenge, you know, some of those perceptions around, and I think what Lena was mentioning about, you know, the Swedish system as well, about, you know, the financial incentive to hiring women. On the one hand, you know, you don't want women to feel like they're there or to have criticism because, oh, I'm just here because someone, you know, kind of paid for me to be here. But ultimately, if, you know, even if people are maybe, you know, taking advantage of that for the wrong reasons of the financial incentive. But then once women are in the room, actually look at what contributions they might be making. And then suddenly, you know, it doesn't matter really how you get them in the door. Once they're in the door, what counts is what contributions are they making? And if the financial scheme is kind of encouraging people to get people in the door, even if it's for the wrong reasons rather than the right reasons, ultimately, if the result is that more women are in the room and kind of creating these better industries, you know, better results for the companies or the, you know, the government administrations, it doesn't really matter. And then that in of itself is, you know, more evidence for why we should be doing this.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I think there's a question on employment as well, employment policy for Lena from the Zoom, from Raquel Fernandez. She's asking, and I'm going to read the question. In the context of promoting gender equality through procurement, have you encountered any challenges related to the procurement legislation? Or maybe worse, did anyone claim that this was a potential discrimination due to gender? Did anyone say that this was discrimination due to gender in the policy you presented?
Not that I've heard of. I think this has been received well, because it's not as if the companies will not get contracts if they don't hire women. It's just that they will get a bonus. So it's not. I wouldn't say that is. I haven't heard of any opposition against this from the companies. And one thing that we've discussed also as a continuation of this project, which is not settled yet, but it is also and that, of course, is more related to the inclusiveness of the companies, is that as a next step to look at, because we have this kind of something that we call a macho index, that is an index for the construction sector, where because it is a very, can be seen like a very macho environment to working, and so I think it's the construction companies themselves that has developed this index, and that you can get a score of that index to make sure that your company is more inclusive and that you're working with discriminatory behaviors or harassment behaviors or those kind of things. And then if you score high on that index, that could give you an additional weight in the procurement process. But this is something still on the discussion level, so I'm not going to say that we're doing this, but it's the next step in this process to see if we can somehow help in the construction sector to work with these issues.
Thank you. I don't see any hand in the room, but feel free, of course, this is more than welcome to ask questions to our panelists. And we have a few minutes more to go. I have one question that I think all of you can maybe respond to. Digitalization. Of course, we could not avoid it. So there's a growing trend for increased use of digitalization in many sectors, including transportation and roads, design, operation, management, everything. How do you see that having an impact on the place of women in the road sector? Anyone more? Lenny? Lina first?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yes, no, but I can say that in the Swedish Transport Administration, the IT and the digitalization like units or departments, that's where we have the least amount of women working. I think it's 12% in the IT department, and then in digitalization, it's slightly more, but it's not. So there you can see that even though we have a quite balanced workforce, it's in these sectors that we need to work a little bit harder. And I think that this is crucial, as I think Justin mentioned in the previous panel, that for the transport system, I think when designing it and when looking at these kind of timetables and new routes that we create with the AI or the digitalization, if that is not done with a gender perspective, then we can see the inequalities of the current transport system persist. So I think that is a crucial thing to work with. But I don't have any answer on to how for the moment.
Bueno, la digitalización es indudable que
No
ya
doubt digitalization has clearly swept us over. When we started to do this type of discussions, 10, 12 years ago, we started to talk about digital transformations, and now it's not new. But it is true that the construction sector within the digitalization ranking, it's very much at the bottom. It is one of the industries which is less digitalized. So we have a lot of room for improvement. But there's new professions that are coming out. Digitalization to me is an opportunity always. There's people who are afraid of digitalization because jobs are destroyed. Actually, I don't think so. I think that we change jobs. We turn them into different jobs. It is a great opportunity. The industries here, AI, IoT, robotics, drones, all of new technologies are arriving, and we need new profiles for that digitalization, obviously. But to me, digital transformation is always something that is innovating, doing things in a different way, thinking in a different way, developing skills, soft skills, aptitudes and attitudes. And we women are very good there. So we have a lot of advantage there. So there's digital natives now. So it has come over us so strong. Some of us, most of us are actually digital because of convention, some of us, but our children are native, digital native, both boys and girls. So they grow in equal opportunities, equal conditions, maybe something which is different from what our parents, our grandparents did. That's a great opportunity. And for all new professions, they will need to be trained in those profiles. Just an example, because I am coming from Telefónica, women who are trained in digital issues are absolutely brilliant, very, very good. So this is a gate which is open for research, what we're digitalizing in construction, which is a lot. It is an opportunity. Microphone, please. Thank you, Patrick. I have a question. This international workshop is focused on gender, right? But the team is also diverse. There's an overlapping, let's call it like that, of women, and there's some diversity. I'm thinking about the disabilities. When you're thinking about the gender policies, are you also thinking about some women who have a physical disability of some sort, but also maybe mental profiles, Asperger, and I don't know. Are you thinking about that? Are you waiting for later to do that? Or is this just part of diversity which is gender related, or is this related, or have you not thought about that? In our case, we actually first focused on disability, but then we were already seeing needs of also focusing on gender equality. As of today, you're right, we have the two realities that are overlapping, and we are facing these realities and other realities that are related to diversity, not only those, but in our case, we're focusing on both. Sometimes they overlap, but some other times they don't. There's not a specific program for feminine talent with disabilities. It's a very remote probability, so we focus on both collectives or both groups with programs that we believe are going to be able to help us. Feminine talent, female talent. So we want to focus on vocations from early stages. We want to help them choose the right careers. And when we focus on disabilities, we're focusing on both women and disability, but from the point of view of focusing on other needs, different needs. We wanted to be 100% employable within our company because we want them to be absolutely integrated within our daily life, but focusing on other needs, which maybe are more focused on vocational training, FP in Spanish. So we want to convey messages to attract talent. In some cases, it's female talent. And when we do recruiting, also we do that recruitment inclusive process with physical disabilities, with mental or psychological disabilities. We want to focus on what they might need so as to be assessed so that they get to the final selection. So some needs are going to be the same, but some others are going to be very specific of the group where we're focusing.
So we will soon close the panel. So maybe one last comment.
Just a short answer. In asking we to focus on accessibility too. It's important to provide a road for everybody where everybody can park and rest, for instance. So yes, we do both of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's important indeed. That's a very nice last remark, actually. That's important that roads serve the needs of everyone, whoever they are, whatever their conditions might be. This will be the closing of this panel, and I would like everyone to thank our panelists for the very interesting conversation, and also for the audience members in the room and in Zoom for the questions that they asked. Thank you.
Bueno, hemos tenido dos paneles espectaculares con muy buenos
panelistas. We have had excellent panels with very good panelists. We're going to go to the closing session. And first, the president of ATC, Álvaro Lavareño, and then the president of PIARC, Nancy Bali. First of all, I would like to apologize for Juan Pedro Fernández, who is the General Director of the Ministry of Transport, and he has not been able to come. He has a very urgent meeting, so he has not been able to come here. I'd like to underline three conclusions. Number one, we've been discussing throughout the morning that in the world, 50% or even slightly more than 50% of the world is women. Nature is wise. And we need to understand that for sure. That's the way it is. The second idea is that there's 25% of women only in engineering. And that's not good. We've seen that we need to contribute more. Women need to contribute more. There's different parameters that induce us to select different professions. It's based on culture. As we've said, it's important to make a snapshot of what we have. We need to have more studies and have statistics of all the sectors and see eventually what happens. because we need cultural and global changes. It's not just a specific issue. We need to take into consideration three things. Number one, engineering in roads, planning, design, but the other one is the workers themselves on the road, but then the users also. We talked about all of them throughout the morning. The engineering industry and professions and studies, university studies is also very important. Workers, road workers, it's also very important. During coffee break, we were talking among some of us about the centers of road preservation, the workshops that need to be designed, taking into consideration the percentage of women that need to join this sector. But finally, users, as the Secretary General said, the final user need to be taken into consideration when they're designed. In education, we need to train soft skills. Talent, obviously, is very important. We've been talking about talent all morning, and also language is very important. We tend to not provide the necessary importance, but we need to change, and for that, we need to give language the necessary importance. The strategy of equality of our ministry, Patricia Sánchez stated that our ministry has an equality strategy for some time now. We're working on specific approaches. We need to take that into consideration, not just the strategy, but there's specific fields that we're working on. We've also been talking today about the case methodology. We've presented the different experiences. I personally, allow me to please confess you that at home I'm a minority. I have two daughters, my wife. I feel surrounded and therefore they are in command. I felt that they were right when they discussed in the first panel about the statistics that many women go for the bio industry. In my case, it's also the case. My two kids are young, 11 and 13, but when I ask them, they are focusing on the bio sector. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. When I talk to them at home, they tell me, let them study what they want. And I say, well, that's what they're going to do, but I need to talk about engineering, which is my expertise, right? We engineers don't sell, we've been told. We don't talk about our profession. Well, I try. Maybe I'm too insistent. I'm not very convincing, but my daughter, I'm afraid, follow a different line, different from engineering. Finally, to finish, as a final comment, we need more women in this sector. Yes, it's clear. We need to think about women more. Thank you very much to all of you.
My sincere thanks to all the panelists on the both sessions that we had, the two round tables over here. It's very interesting to be listening to that. But I've also noticed that there's a commonality coming out through, apart from the two round tables in there, that is not restricted to any particular country. And this is why I'm very pleased to see that PIARC has taken up this particular challenge and has a dedicated group in terms of looking at the issues on gender. But just to satisfy my dear friend Jose over there, that the group at PIARC has also been looking, it says diversity in the title. So yes, when we're talking about various types of disabilities and that, I'm sure at some stage later on the group will start looking at that, and I'm assuming that it was an easier topic to choose right now, or easier component to choose to talk about gender, because it's also in our face. In the face, when I mean that, we can see the inequality and the disparities as far as gender is concerned. So that's where we've started off, and I'm hoping that we will carry on and do the rest of it when we talk about diversity. And diversity may be a little bit more challenging part or component for us to challenge, because it deals not only with issues in terms of gender, but it talks about cultural diversity, etc., and so forth as well, and racial issues as well. Becomes a little bit more challenging for us to do that, but it's something that we have to do. We can't be talking about inclusivity when we're starting to not even recognize the issues in language. And I saw a few times, a number of the panelists also spoke about the language. It's very true that when we're talking about these issues around gender, and that we take into account a language that we use. And I heard, the panelists talking about that. And I don't think it's only restricted to the Spanish language. It's, it comes into the other languages as well, as to how do we use the language and we address the issues related to this. Now, for many, many years ago, when at one time I was an engineer before I became a paper shuffler. Yeah. And people said, oh, you're getting promoted and you're becoming senior person in the management field. And I thought I was becoming highly de-skilled, but that's another issue for another day in terms of progressing. But I remember reading a paper as a young engineer, and it was related, and I heard it again yet today after many years I've heard it, the link between engineering and health. And it's very simple. Yes, we understand the medical field in that. But if it was not for engineers, in terms of making sure that we have the kind of plants to purify water, to clean water, the kind of diseases which is associated with polluted waters and that. It is first the engineers, because they came up with the systems to be able to purify the water, that we have the direct link with health. So that we've actually reduced our dependence on health. Now, all of us will have different views about the issue about the medical field, etc. But my personal view is always that, they give you a lot of drugs, these doctors. Prescribe drugs for your body. I don't think the drugs actually help you. There's always a side effect, of something or the other. But engineering is very clean. You come there, you've got, whether it's a road or whether it's a bridge that you're connecting people across a river or anything else, the connections that you create, it's either that or it is not a sort of a intermediate step that you're taking to keep you alive. And so engineering is a very, very noble profession, in my opinion. And that is why it becomes very important for us to make sure that our profession is as inclusive as possible, and we do not neglect the other half of our population. I heard Alvaro talking about his family. I was working in an agency where 50% of them were women. In our senior management, we had a very flat structure. There were 9 of us in the senior management. 4 of them were women. They making decisions. And one of the things we did, now the civil engineers amongst us will understand this when I say that we always have a budget, and you put out a tender, you get a price, and we always have this thing for unforeseen circumstances, a contingency amount. What we did in our agency was very simple. First of all, we never told the contractors or our consulting engineers who were working with us as to what the contingency amount was. Simply because when they thought that there was a contingency amount, it belonged to them. It didn't. It belonged to us as the client. Now, we're a bunch of engineers, but what we did is that, and my former colleague used to be on the finance commission, or FinCom as well, Inga. Inga was our CFO. She controlled that contingency amount. So if anybody wanted to spend any money out of the contingency amount, I, as a CEO, could not turn around and say yes. Everybody had to first go and speak to her to say that, listen, this is the reason why. Because the explanation that you give to a non-engineer had to make sense before we can spend that money. And in that way, we started to empower the women in our agency. To say that you have a major role and a contribution to be making onto that. This was a simple little thing we did. It wasn't rocket science. It wasn't rocket science. It was a simple little thing. But when you showed people around, and I'm talking about your service providers, as to where the decision has been made, people, of course, there were some comments been made about the weakness of the CEO. He's letting a woman make the suggestion. Those things came up as well. But hey, it went in by one ear and out by the other, and you didn't pay much attention to it. But it inculcated a certain kind of culture to say that the respect that you have to show for the decision maker. That was the objective of what we were trying to do with that, and maybe that is something that we can. And it's very rarely that we as engineers promote our profession where we should go, I believe, that we improve the lives, we improve the quality of the lives. This is why we should say that we went into the engineering profession, not because of the salaries, etc., compared to bank managers, etc., and all of that. Don't know what's happening in Spain, but in South Africa, we have many engineers who are poached by banks. And the reason that when you speak to the bankers as to why do they poach the engineers, is engineers are logical and they make decisions. It's not on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, but they're very decisive in the bank. And that's why they find engineers to be attractive into the banking sector. So that is the challenge that we face as well. But if we can promote our profession, is to say that we are improving our lives, improving the lives of society and the contribution to make, I believe that we will go a long way in promoting this. And then the issue with that, one of the things that I used to do, I used to serve on this NGO, which had to do with early child education. And our concentration in this organization was the use of toys. Use of toys. Because what we found that, the vulnerable components of our society, the poorer components of our society, their children never played with toys. And for various, in our country, due to racial issues, we didn't have access to certain things. So we started to use this, NGO uses toys to do that. So this is one of the things that we do. I mean, we look at ourselves, right? When there's a girl, I dress her in pink and I give her dolls to play with. Why don't I do that to my children? Why do I do that to the boys as well? Why do I think from the very outset that this is the path that the girl goes and this is the path the boys go? We should make use of toys as well as we're bringing up our children, so that let them there. You get Lego. Why not buy your daughters Lego sets where they can build airplanes and cars and submarines and all these beautiful toys that they can build it? Yeah, why not let them play with that? Why do we restrict that to the boys only? And we buy this, there's city little things, they call them the Lego things that we buy. So I think it requires a mindset change as well in terms of how do we do this. And I must confess that personally, I didn't do very well as far as children are concerned, seeing that our parents were talking about that. We at work, what we also encourage is that all of us adopted a school or two and usually went back to your old school. And careers week that we have at our schools, and we used to go and promote the careers. So there I was standing there, promoting engineering, and I see my son coming along there, and he tells his friends, don't go and speak to my father. He works very hard and he gets paid very little. Let's go and speak to these other people over here. Yeah. So I didn't do too well. But having said that, I'm very happy to say that my brother's grandson, who I believe is my grandson as well now, because it's my brother's grandson, my older brother's, the first one who's taken up civil engineering. So I have a favorite in the family now. Just doing civil engineering with that. So with those few words over there, and hopefully that we've had a very good session. All of us have enjoyed this session. And again, I want to express my thanks to the organizers, to the ATC, to the ministry, to the college for giving us, making use of these facilities, and of course for the initiative that the PIARC group has taken. I feel very good about it. That just happened during my presidency. So at least I can say I've left something behind. Thank you very much, folks.